Hey guys, welcome back to another Cinema 4D tutorial. As the title suggests, this one is going to be about Vray. Now, I appreciate all the ideas that I got from you guys in the last video. So what I intend to do is look at some of these other render engines like Redshift, Octane, and Arnold. I'm going to look into those to see what they have to offer. I'm going to try them out, and perhaps maybe I will get one of them and look at what it can do. And then maybe make some tutorials out of that. Also, I'm thinking about going back and redoing some of the sub-D modeling tutorials that I did before because some of them are kind of old and the tools have been updated. So I think that also is a good idea if I go back and redo some of those. Alright, so if you don't use Vray, that's okay. You don't have to follow along with this. But I saw that quite a few of you commented and said that you wanted to see more Vray tutorials. So this one's going to be about Vray, more specifically some problems that occur when using Vray materials with alpha channel and flat projection. So let me show you how you would normally do this natively inside of Cinema 4D using the native Cinema 4D materials. Okay, so let's say that you have an object, some type of a device that has labels on it. And when I say a label, what I mean is, maybe a computer, a notebook or a tablet or something. And on the side of these devices, you have different ports. You have a USB port, a power port, a microphone, a headphone port. You've got HDMI ports. And every one of those ports will have a label on it. Now, usually the body of that device is a flat black color, maybe plastic or something, and then the label will be white. Well, normally you would apply that label using an alpha channel. So let's say that we have this cylinder here. This is just going to be a mock-up of a rough device. And let's say we want to apply a label to the side of it. So I'm going to create a new material. And for the base color, I'm just going to name this one base. Let's make it maybe a red color or something. We'll just go with a dark color red like that. And we're going to apply this to the cylinder. And now we need to apply our labels. So I'm going to create another material. And this one I'm just going to keep white. And we're going to turn on the alpha channel. And this is where we need to load in our alpha channel image, which is black and white. Okay, so I've got a bunch of images here. And I've got this power symbol here, and we're just going to use that for the example. So what we have here is a black and white image of the power symbol, and I'm going to drag that in. And I'm going to change this view over here to a plane so we can see the image appear better. All right, so you can see that the color is white, and the alpha image here is allowing the white to come through. Everything that's black is opaque, it's not going to be seen, but everything that's white is allowing that color to come through. And so we get this image here of the power symbol. All right, so if we want to apply this to our tube, our cylinder, we can just drag that over. Now keep in mind, and I think I've said this before, but I'll repeat it again, that the object manager over here on the right, you see there's two little panes here, window panes inside of this larger one. The left pane here with all of the objects in it, that is executed from top to bottom. But this pane over here on the right with the tags, this is executed from left to right. So over here it's top to bottom. Over here it is left to right. So imagine that this base material is like a Photoshop layer, but instead of being stacked vertically, they're stacked horizontally. So everything to the left would be the base, and then everything applied to the right would be layering. And you can have hundreds of materials placed on your object, but whatever material is all the way to the right, that is supposed to be what's on the very top. Okay, so we need to click on the cylinder and the material here. And the projection by default is set to UVW. We want to change it to flat. And we need to activate two things in order to fix this. We need to activate this tool over here called the texture mode. And we also need to activate the axis tool, or enable axis. Okay, and that gives us our projection plane. So we want to pull this over, and then we want to rotate it. And the reason why we want to rotate it is because this axis plane here, or this texture projection plane, projects in the Z direction. So whatever way the Z handle is pointing, that's the way that image is going to be projected. So we want to rotate it 90 degrees, and we want to scale it down. And you can see that it's being duplicated or tiled. So we want to disable that tile feature, and then we want to pull that up just a little bit because I'm going to apply another texture here in a moment. All right, so if we were to hit render, you can see it's on the front there or the side. But if we flip around to the back, it's also being projected onto the back. And if we hit render, it's also showing up in the render. But we don't want that on the back side of this. We only want it on the front. So the native Cinema 4D material here, if you click on the tag for that alpha image, it has an option here called side. And by default, it's set to both. So if we were to set this to front, hit render again, it's still there on the front, but if we turn around to the back, you can see it's still showing up in the viewport, but if we render, it's now gone. So this appears to be, I guess, some type of viewport bug that's been around for a very long time inside of Cinema 4D. It's yet to be addressed. But in this case, it's not really a big deal. And the reason for that is because you can see when we render, it's no longer there. So just remember that the Z handle here on this projection plane, whichever way you've got that pointed, that's the way your image is going to be projected. All right, so let's just duplicate this one more time. So I'm just going to control click and drag the tag over to duplicate it. And then we'll pull this one down. All right. And there's our two power symbols on the back. They're still there, of course, but if we render, they're not there. All right, so that is how you do this natively inside of Cinema 4D. However, this is where there's a big problem if you're using V-Ray materials. All right, so let's quickly just create some new V-Ray materials here. We'll go over to V-Ray Advanced Material and give that a second to load. All right, so for the diffuse layer, I'm just going to give this another dark red color. And I need to change the render engine over, so I'm going to change this over to V-Ray. And we need to create another advanced material. And this one is going to be called Power 1. I'll just rename this here to Base. All right, so this power symbol we need to load in the power symbol. So in the weight channel, the weight channel is the same as the alpha channel. It's just called weight here in the material editor here for the V-Ray material, but weight is alpha. So we need to load in our image. Now, this is where we come across another issue, and that is if we were to load in the same black and white image that we used in the native Cinema 4D material, it's not going to look right. So let's load that in. And let's change this over to a plane. And you can see that it needs to be inverted. It's not looking right. So there is an option here called invert. And if you click it, it inverts properly. However, the developer of V-Ray for Cinema 4D has stated that you need to prep your images ahead of time and do not use this invert feature because it will cause problems later on. So you don't want to use that. What you want to do is you want to take your image and you want to load it in, say, something like Photoshop or some kind of editor that can invert it. And then save it out. And now that is the image that you want to use. So now you can see we've got our inverted power symbol image and it's actually showing up here correct. So that's another thing that you need to keep in mind when using alpha channels in V-Ray. All of your alpha channels or your images that you're going to be using in the alpha channel, they all need to be inverted. All right, so we need to apply our material. So I'm just going to take the base, apply that over here. And we need to take the power symbol, Apply that there. And we also need to, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to delete this one, this extra one here. We're only going to have one here for the moment. All right, so if we hit render, okay, what we're getting here is just that power symbol, but we're not seeing the base material at all. The reason for this is because we need to enable the mix textures option. Anytime you're applying labels to an object that have an alpha channel, such as we're doing here with the power symbol, those images that are using the alpha channel need to have mix textures enabled. Don't enable it on the base channel, just enable this on those material tags that are using an alpha channel. Okay, so we'll have that on, and we render again. Now it shows up properly. Okay, now if we flip over to the back, you can't see it, and this is another issue with V-Ray materials. In my own experience, sometimes these materials will show up on the object, sometimes they won't. In this case, you can see here, nothing is showing up. You got red on the inside, white on the outside, and we can't see what's going on here. But if we hit render on the backside, it's still showing up, even though we have this side set to front. Now remember, it worked natively using the Cinema 4D material, but using V-Ray, it does not work. So you might be thinking, well, okay, that should be simple. Just use a set selection. Okay, let's try it. Let's first put this over here, this material, so I can actually see where the material is at, or where the symbol is at. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the loop cut here, just so we can make a set selection around there. Okay, I'm going to use set selection. You can get to that by going to select, set selection. And what I want to do is I want to drag that into the selection box for that material. Now I want to replace it with the V-Ray material again. All right, so you can see that we just have that set selection here on the front. It's not selected on the back. Hit render. Okay, it appears to be working, showing up on the front. We'll flip around to the back side, hit render again, and it's still there. So clearly using set selections is not going to work when using alpha channel images like this power symbol. All right, so this is the issue that I was having because I was doing some work for some clients, and some of these objects, or I should say devices, had a lot of labels on them for different ports and things like that. So I had a ton of these to do just on one side, and all of these projected labels were being projected through the mesh onto the opposite side of it, and those labels were showing up on the opposite side, and I didn't want that. So one thing that you can do is that you can actually split your object. So if we were to take this and just select this front side here where the label is at, then you can use the split command and split that off. And that way those materials are only they're only applied to just that section of geometry that you split off. That's one way you could do it. However, there are cases when your object may be inside of a say a subdivision surface object. And that's not going to work because if you have one object in there and you split it off, it's not going to look right. So, I really don't like to split up my geometry because things can quickly become very messy. So I tried to look for more workarounds. I tried to look online. There's very little information about this, but I did find something that works, but it's kind of tedious to set it up. But I'm going to show you anyway. So what we want to do is we want to create a V-Ray blend material. And the way the blend material works is you have layers. The base material here will be the red because that's our base coat. So we want to take the red material and drag it down here. The next material, we want to enable that, and that's going to be our power symbol. And you can see it showing up correctly here. And what we want to do is we want to apply that over here to that power symbol material that we were using there. Now remember, we had mixed textures turned on for that material. But now since we're using a blend material, we don't want that on. So be sure to turn that option off with your blend material tags. Now when we render, still there on the front, we'll flip around to the back and it's gone. It's no longer there. So in order to do this, you have to use set selections and you have to use a blend material. Now you might be thinking, well, why not just the blend material? Why do you have to use set selection? Well, if we delete this set selection and delete it from the link box from that material, and we flip around to the back side again, you can see it's showing up, and if we render, it's there. So you have to use set selection with blend material. So I'm going to undo that a couple times to get my set selection back. All right, so that's the way to do that. Now, there's another problem here, and that is, what if you want to use multiple labels on an object? Right now, we've just got this one power symbol by itself, but what if you've got like 20 or 30 of these things? All right, so let's take this material tag here for the blend material and let's duplicate it. And we need to go back over here, select the cylinder, be sure you have the axis and texture tools turned on, and we want to pull that one down. Now you can see, we can't see it because remember, it's to that top set selection. So we just need to pull this down a little bit. And we need to go back over into polygon mode. And we need to do another set selection. Let's make a loop cut. And let's delete that selection from there. All right, so I'm going to make another set selection for this bottom power symbol. All right, and then we're going to drag that one into this second power symbol tag. All right, now if we hit render, notice now we've got another problem. And now we've got the second one, which is the bottom one here. That one's showing up. But what about the top one? It's no longer there. We can't see it. And if we flip around to the back, nothing is being shown. Okay, so the back side is good, but something is not right on the front side. Okay, well, the reason for this is because we're using the same material tag over and over again, and you can't do that with Vray. Now, technically, we could do this using the native Cinema 4D material. You can keep using that same material tag over and over and over again as many times as you wanted, but you can't do that with Vray materials. You have to create separate materials. So what that means is, okay, we have our base, and then we have the first power symbol material. We need to duplicate that one, and we need to give it another name. It cannot have the same name as the first one. If you have duplicate materials that you're using, like we're doing here, each one of them have to have a different name. If they have the same name, it's not going to work. So we're just going to call this Power 2. And then we also have to make a duplicate blend material. So we're going to copy this one. The first one I'm going to call Power Blend 1. The second one we're going to call Power Blend 2. And we need to take the Power 2 material here and we need to drag that in to the coat option here for this Power Blend 2. So we need to click it and drag it up because it had Power 1 in it. We want to put Power 2. Now I know what you might be thinking. Holy crap, this is a lot of work just to get this to work. Yes, I agree. It should have been fixed. It should be different from this. You know, you shouldn't have to go through this much trouble just to do it. I know you're probably thinking that, but this is the way it is. This is the only workaround that I was able to find, and I had to do it the hard way, meaning I had to find it myself because there's very little information about this online, even over on the Vray forums. All right, so we have this one here, which is Power 1, but we need to take the second one, the second blend material we just created, and we need to drag that over here to number 2. Okay, now if we hit render, both of them are now showing up. And if we flip around to the back side, they're not there. So this is how you solve the problem when using alpha channels for labels and you have multiples of those materials and you're using them with flat projection, you have to use a blend material and you have to use set selections for each one of those places where the label is going to be at. But you have to use duplicates of that material and each one has to have their own name. That's the only way you're going to get this to work. So, as I said, it's a bit of a pain in the butt, it's tedious, and if you've got 50 different labels you got to apply, then that means you're going to have to make 50 of those labels with a blend material. So that means you're going to have 50 materials and then 50 blend materials. You're going to have a lot that you're going to have to be working with. Unfortunately, it's just the way it is. So, this is one reason why I think I might look into Arnold or Octane or something like that, because from what I've seen, I don't really think those render engines have that kind of trouble like Vray does here with the material system. I don't know, maybe some of you guys use Arnold or Octane or something. Maybe you can comment below and let me know if those material systems for those engines have limitations or have something like this that's similar. All right, guys, so I think that about wraps up this tutorial. As I said, this is something that there is very little information about online, so I'm hoping that this has helped you, at least those of you that use Vray, because I saw that some of you commented and said that you would like to see more Vray tutorials. All right, so one more quick thing before we wrap this up is that this is Vray for Cinema 4D version 3.4. Even if you're not using the newest version, which is 3.4, this problem still exists in older versions. So if you're on 1.8 or 1.9, the problem is still there, and this workaround works for those versions as well. So whatever version of Vray for Cinema 4D you're using, the problem is still there. It hasn't been addressed, and this is the workaround that you want to use for it. All right, guys, so as always, thank you for watching. I hope to have more tutorials coming soon, and I will catch you guys in the next tutorial.